Hello everyone, welcome. I'm just going to check that I'm streaming successfully and then we'll begin. And yes, it looks like we have an active stream, so thank you for being here. I see we have Villainous in the chat. Um, and you have Sergeant Grinch. Yes, you were on time, so no need to do push-ups right now. Yeah, the stream delay is about 2 seconds or less. It's actually pretty good. So, and he never returned his horse, just jumped in. I've been mulling about smartly, but not announcing myself. Hello there, welcome. And Built for Speed, welcome. Good to see you again. Yeah, so guys, thank you very much for being here. I do appreciate the company. And yeah, I hope we'll have a good conversation today. So I want to continue my analysis of atheism. And of course, this was left. YouTube deleted this just a moment ago before I went live. And Dodzo, welcome. So Mike Hunt, Hamster Box, hello from England, carrying the good work. Thank you very much, Hamster. I will be doing so. Yeah, once I finish this, there's quite a number of slides I've been working on that I need to prep and start presenting. Uh, yeah, of course, yeah, I'm speaking with Al-Fadi in the next few days. We were supposed to meet, but he's been having health issues. So let's just say there's been a lot of cancellations. And we were supposed to record, but that didn't occur. So it looks like that's being pushed back. But I've got like 10 more episodes coming out with him. And I was also supposed to do a live stream with Al-Fadi and Jay Smith a few days ago. So yeah, well, we'll see when that happens, but probably at this rate around March only. So Mike Hunt left this message: religion is the most evil thing to exist, based on something that doesn't even exist, which is fascinating coming from someone who doesn't have any beliefs, right? He hasn't thought about religion, doesn't know anything about religion, hasn't thought about it. So yeah, and of course he's just simply parroting the same words as those of the Enlightenment thinkers like Baron de Holbach, whom we've mentioned before, which was then repeated by people like Sham Harris and Richard Dawkins in a less intelligible form. Of course, as an atheist, he doesn't have a moral standard in terms of a moral transcendent lawgiver to judge what is good and evil. So evil is just simply, in his case, opinion. And of course, atheists have been spending a lot of time trying to define their morals. So I will do a talk about that in the future as well. Now, yeah. So on that, I want to go back to this book by this guy, Atheism, The Case Against God, by George H. Smith. Now, what is fascinating about George H. Smith is, let me bring up the slides. And so on the slide, what we have here is George H. Smith telling us that atheism is the absence of, again, Built for Speed very well asked, to the atheist, what is evil? So of course they've got very limited options in terms of defining what is evil. So social convention is the most common one. But of course social conventions can change. And of course if one society does it as a social convention, let's say the abuse of little girls, then is that society wrong? And by the atheist standard, that answer is no, because it is a societal convention. Of course, if someone decides to promote an idea and it becomes successful, they can then forcibly change society, in which case morality is simply just what people decide at any given time. So there's no transcendent idea of morality and there's no transcendent view of justice. There would also be no transcendent view of truth. These are interlinked. Now, George H. Smith says atheism is the absence of a belief in a God. Okay, fine and well. Nothing more. So it's merely the absence of belief, nothing more. Atheism is not, then, under this definition, I would assume, should I interpret this correctly, this is not an issue where I push my belief, my doctrines, and of course, there will be no worldview attached to this. There will be no perspective on the big questions in life, because a worldview really is a perspective, a series of answers on the rather big questions in life. And if a theist wishes to draw monumental implications from this lack of belief, he must argue for his claims. Well, I think we can easily see he contradicts himself within moments, right? So the historic use of atheism has meant the use of evaluation and reason, because remember, atheists claim to be the epitome of reason. In fact, they state that being theistic, having a belief in God, makes you unreasonable, makes you someone who is simply just superstitious, and you've forfeited the use of reason. You lack reason, whereas they lack theism, which means they have reason. And so the idea being, as the humanists then, from the 1930s, the humanists went on a huge campaign to basically associate science with atheism. And to be atheistic is to be scientific, is to be rational. Now, of course, it is irrational to have absolutely no thought about something, to have never spent a moment pondering something, but they claim to just have a lack of belief. Now, they claim to have some sort of to have captured evaluation and reason, but yet they claim not to have done any kind of evaluation of the concept of God. And so atheists traditionally followed the literal meaning. Now we've mentioned this before, right? So let me just skip forward to what this guy actually, so that's his definition of atheism. So let me just jump to here. Let's see, Villainous says, thank you, Build for Speed, says, well said. So Villainous says that God that he thinks doesn't exist actually allows him to exist, and therefore provides the possibility for the guy to think, yeah, well, if God is being, then that is the case. Notice atheism, the case against God. Now, if atheism is merely the lack of belief, why is he writing a book called The Case Against God? This means he has a belief that specifically denies God and has beliefs that replace God. So does a God exist? The question has undoubtedly been asked in one form or another since man has had the ability to communicate. Thousands of volumes have been written on the subject of God. Now, okay, fine and well. So he wants to offer, he examines, dissects, and refutes. So clearly it's not just a lack of belief, because he examines, he dissects, he evaluates, and then he refutes, so he negates the myriad proofs offered by theists, the defenses of sophisticated professional theologians, as well as the average religious layman. So it is not merely a lack of belief. He says, well, it's just a lack of belief, nothing more. And then he starts to provide his beliefs, because obviously he cannot dissect something and offer nothing in return. He must have a counter belief. So yes, he explores the historical and psychological havoc wrought by religion in general. The 20th century was the century of atheism, and we've seen that every single atheist government has been literally genocidal. He concludes that religious belief cannot have any place in the life of modern rational man. That is merely the dialectic. That's old Hegel again. So it is not my purpose to convert people to atheism, but to demonstrate that the belief in God is irrational to the point of absurdity. If a person wishes to continue believing in a God, that is his prerogative, but he can no longer excuse his belief in the name of reason and moral necessity. Okay, so clearly he has some beliefs. Again, I think we can conclude with all the evidence that it's not merely lack of belief. These people are merely hypocrites. And again, the same is stated here in Wikipedia. And they mention a philosopher called Michael Martin. And he said the book was a hard-hitting attack against belief with some limitations. Okay, all fine and well. We'll have a look at Mr. Martin in a minute. And of course, Wikipedia pushes, Amazon has this book as well. So let's continue. I've mentioned this yesterday, and I decided to add a slide, or 2 days ago, and I decided to add a slide here with Hegel, George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel. And Emmanuel, welcome, and hey, we should do a stream one day. Yeah, so he was born in 1770 in Stuttgart, Württemberg, and he died in 1831 in Berlin. He was a German philosopher. Now remember, I mentioned this here from the American Philosophical Association, and they spoke of the new religion, a Hegelian dialectic. So Hegel had the idea that you had primitive beliefs, superstitions, which were then superseded by organized religion, and when the two met, there was a massive violent clash, and eventually organized religion won. Then, of course, organized religion is about to be replaced by socialism, which is the highest state, the progress. These are progressives, right? So we are going to progress to socialism, which will replace organized religion, and that will be the clash, this Hegelian clash, this, thesis, synthesis, antithesis, synthesis, right? And then, of course, eventually socialism will give way to communism. Now, traditionally, atheism has been conceived and construed as a rejection of religion and religious faith. So he speaks here of religion, atheism, and faith, and he offers an interpretation of atheism reminiscent of Hegelian dialectical approach. Now, of course, the communist approach, the Marxist approach, the socialist approach is entirely Hegelian, whereby atheism as an antithesis to religion. So notice, they speak here of, in the American Philosophical Association, they speak of atheism as an antithesis to religion, and it paves the way for a synthesis. So you've got thesis, antithesis or antithesis, and synthesis or synthesis. So that's Marx talking right there. So these guys are playing right into Marx's hands, and maybe they are Marxists. Don't forget, Lenin very clearly stated that the Communist Party, the socialists must constantly promote the propaganda of atheism. So the question is, one of the words of atheists that we see is the socialist propaganda of atheism versus the comments of atheists. How do we separate between the two? Can an atheist please tell me which of the statements that you make, which of the arguments that you present are distinct from, separate to the propaganda of atheism, which was promoted and spread over decades by thousands of trained socialists, trained Marxists, who attacked religion with abandon? So please do let me know. Clayton JW, hey, well, if you have a Facebook account or other ones, can you share Lloyd's link for us to join this live stream? Well, thank you, guys. I do appreciate it. Yeah, please. I don't know how many are with me today, but oh, okay, enough. Don't worry. So yeah. For those who want to friend me on Facebook, you're welcome to find me on Facebook. Last year, I was blocked on Facebook for 7 months. This year, so far, I've been lucky. Unless I'm being throttled somehow, I'm only being seen by a limited number of people. Anyway, so understand we're talking over the religious significance of atheism. So yeah, they do view atheism as a religious concept, as a religious worldview, a functional view of religion rather than a substantive view of religion. All right, now notice Hegel does say the following, and thank you. One of my subscribers provided this information. This is really, really good. Hegel stated the following. He maintained that if facts contradict theory, so if the facts contradict his theories, then umso schlimmer für die Fakten. So umso schlimmer für die Fakten. So much worse for the facts. In other words, if the facts contradict his Hegelian theories, his philosophies, well, then the facts have to go. And this is one of the Enlightenment philosophers, one of the very famous philosophers. Marx was heavily influenced by this man. So this is one of the prophets of atheism that we have to now obviously look up to and respect as one of the great thinkers. And this man says, well, if the theory is denied by the facts, then we have to now reject the facts. So yeah, and this is not uncommon. These, if you look at the philosophers, the prophets of atheism, of the Enlightenment, you will discover these people were outrageous racists and outrageous white supremacists. Today promoted as, well, these were great thinkers of atheism. So Dan Smith said the youngest and newest religion is atheism, was gods of science and government and high priests of scientific leaders and politicians, and even child sacrifices given to their gods. Well, yeah, there's certainly some truth to that. And of course, when socialism was founded, they did claim that the atheist scientists would be the new priests. They would be the leaders of the new religion. That was explicitly stated. Right, to continue, I mentioned this guy yesterday. So he's discussing the term atheist, Professor Matt McCormick, who does an entire course on atheism. Now, if atheism is merely the lack of belief, how come there is a course on it which discusses atheism in terms of arguments, objections, responses, concepts, and how do you respond to theists? How do you argue for atheism? And defines a number of things. So if it's merely a lack of belief, why does it need an entire course at university level given by a professor? And he has a number of texts. The Improbability of Gods by Michael Martin, Science and Religion, The Impossibility of a God, Michael Martin again, and the Cambridge Companion to Atheism, Michael Martin, notorious atheist who wrote the Cambridge Companion to Atheism. So again, most of the sources that I am referring to tend to have been written by atheists. Right? Now, of course, we've already discussed this, that atheism is, as we know it, is a relatively recent development. It is not a new development. It really dates to the late 1700s. Now, one can certainly go back to periods before where there were atheists who would say things, but as an organized religion, if you want to call it that, as an organized movement, it dates back to the late 1700s. Right, now to continue, Michael Martin, they've just mentioned it before, as one of the main people that is referenced in this course, this university level course, Colony on Atheism. Now, Michael Lou Martin, the magazine Free Inquiry, which is the largest circulation atheist magazine from the American Humanist Association, which is an atheist organization, obviously materialists, they called him one of the most formidable academic champions of atheism. So how do you champion a lack of belief? I just have a lack of belief. Well, I'm now going to champion this. If you champion something, you've clearly thought about it. You are presenting arguments for it. You are arguing against any other ideas. So again, we're looking at, well, one could call it hypocrisy. He died in 2015 and blah-de-blah-de-blah. So he joined the philosophy department at Boston University, remained until retirement, and blah, blah, blah. So he's got his PhD in philosophy from Harvard. Now, he's best known for his writings on the philosophy of religion. Now, of course, as an atheist, he clearly wouldn't have a very positive view of religion. So Martin made significant contributions to the philosophy of social science and philosophy of law. applying his fiercely skeptical mindset to the service of science and reason wherever they were challenged by ideology or wishful thinking. If you're religious, as far as he's concerned, you're a wishful thinker. Right? His best-known works include Atheism, a Philosophical Justification, The Case Against Christianity, Readings in the Philosophy of Social Science with Lee McIntyre, Atheism, Morality and Meaning, and The Impossibility of a God, as well as The Improbability of God, The Cambridge Companion to Atheism, and his most recent work, The Myth of an Afterlife, The Case Against Life After Death. So he's clearly merely arguing for a lack of belief in God, just a neutral state. But clearly this is not the case again, so the evidence does not follow this, that this is the definition of atheism. That is dogma, Dan. So Dan Smith, follow them without questioning their commandments and rules. That is a dogma. So let's continue. So let's have a look at this. Atheism, a lack of thought, no analysis. This is in the Anthology of Atheism and Rationalism. This came out in 1980. Now, atheism and agnosticism are however commonly misused and misdefined. And this is very, very true. We'll end off, once we finish the slides totally, with something that mentions that. Okay? Now, let us examine their meaning so that these words have when used by actual atheist philosophers and theologians. Now, I've been presenting nothing but those definitions. The average theologian uses atheist to mean a person who denies the existence of a God. And this has been the standard view, someone who actively, consciously denies, rejects the idea of God. Even an atheist would agree that some atheists, a small minority apparently, quote unquote, laugh, 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 would fit this definition. However, most atheists would strongly dispute the adequacy of this definition. Well, we've just seen that these people actively reject. They're writing books. They say, hey, I have no beliefs in God. I have absolutely no view on this. I have no opinion. I have no thoughts about it. I've never thought about it. I have a completely neutral position. I have a non-position. I have no beliefs. By the way, here's 3 books that say that God doesn't exist, and here's why atheism is better than your beliefs. That is hypocrisy. This is not to be taken seriously. That's a joke. It's merely gaslighting. These people are irrational. So notice, they would rather hold that an atheist is a person without a belief in God. Okay, so you're without a belief in God, so what are you believing then? What do you believe? What are your beliefs? Because you do not have a vacuum in your head, you have other beliefs that have filled them. So denying something means that you have knowledge of what it is that you're being asked to affirm. So if you deny it, you have to have knowledge. It's a position of knowledge, right? But that you have rejected that particular concept. So you've looked at it and rejected it. But to be without a belief in God merely means that the term God has no importance or possibly no meaning to you. Okay, that makes logical sense if you are without a belief. Now, here's my question. Let's say you didn't know that there was a race of 3-foot-high blue-skinned people on an island in the South Pacific. And then tomorrow on a documentary, you see this on National Geographic. Or someone brings one to your town and sticks them in the circus and you happen to see them in a cage. Now they are 3-foot blue people. Before, you had no belief in them. You didn't care about them. It didn't mean anything to you. But now that you've seen one, do you have no belief about them? Now that you've physically been introduced to the idea, now that the idea has crossed your mind. So in other words, after the very first time that you've been introduced to an idea, can you have no thoughts about it whatsoever? No conclusion about it? You have no idea what you think about it whatsoever? You would then actively be choosing, if this were true, to not think about it. You're making a choice, deliberately choosing not to think about it. That is not merely an absence of belief, that is an active rebellion against the idea of thinking. You are choosing to be irrational here, to not have any thoughts, to not consider something. That is merely just petulance. That's what children do. So, if you didn't know there was a race of 3-foot-tall blue people, but you saw one, once you were introduced to it, you have to have some kind of conclusion. You have to have drawn some kind of idea about it. Dan Smith says one of their gods is evolution, which we cannot see or hear, and no one has ever met. Yeah, I'll be talking about Darwin in the future. We will be. In fact, Darwin is part of this presentation at the end. I will be talking about Darwin, and once I get to the last slide, and of course I will be doing a lot of work on Darwin. Darwin has a lot of blood on his hands. That man has inspired genocide on a scale you will not believe. So when I watch Dawkins debating, I just switch in my mind every time he says evolution. I change it to God. And yeah, basically Darwinism created the idea of the creation of life, the origin of life without a God, except Darwin never discussed the origin of life. Darwin quite simply said, this is how life evolved. This is how species evolved. This is how we got variety. Darwin does not offer any sort of idea as to the origin of life. So Darwin's ideas come in after he speaks of first life, and then you talk of how it evolved supposedly into multiple different species, how your stereo became a kitchen appliance, right? He speaks of how your fridge became a dishwasher. He speaks of how your dishwasher became an oven. This is what he speaks about. This is about how your little Volkswagen Beetle became a sailing yacht. Understand? This is the kind of thing that Darwin's talking about. But who created the first beetle? That's not what Darwin's discussing. Atheism, a lack of thought, no analysis. Now, of course, in this book, An Anthology of Atheism and Rationalism, edited by Gordon Stein, the book had the following definition. An atheist is a person without a belief in God. The distinction is small but important. To be without a belief in God merely means the term God has no importance or possibly no meaning to you. Belief in God is not a factor in your life. Surely, this is quite different from denying the existence of God. Atheism is not a belief as such. It is a lack of belief. So this is where this idea of a lack of belief comes from. At least one of the sources that try to push this idea. You will notice they are in the minority. In terms of written academic sources, these are entirely in the minority, and none of the serious sources take this seriously. Dan Smith says, yes, the origin point is never able to be explained scientifically. Yeah. Now, by using the above definition, atheists have attempted to shift the burden of proof, of course. In the article, Is Atheism Presumptuous?, atheist Jeffrey J. Lauder admits that I agree with Copan that anyone who claims God does not exist must shoulder a burden of proof just as much as anyone who claims God exists. Wow, Steve, thank you very, very much. I really appreciate the donation. Thank you very much. It's very kind. Right. So now, of course, the idea of utilizing this definition sidesteps the burden of proof of having to provide a rationale for your beliefs. And if you can claim you don't have any beliefs, but yet we see someone can claim not to have beliefs and then write multiple books about those beliefs and also attacking your beliefs. This makes no logical sense. It is entirely irrational. Now, an anthology of atheism and rationalism, if the atheist is simply without God, then he is not asserting anything. On the other hand, the atheist is asserting the existence of something, God. The theist is asserting the existence of God, so the burden of proof is on the theist. Atheism is without God. It does not assert no God. The atheist does not say there is no God. Well, if he doesn't say that, if he doesn't know, then he is an agnostic. But of course, atheists will vehemently deny being an agnostic. They want to be called an atheist. Thank you, Steve Henry. I'm really glad if this helps you, if this provides some sort of clarity and usefulness, if the content is of course of use to you in your own discussions and arguments. Maybe at some point I really should turn this into a book or turn these slides into booklets. Okay, so once again, an atheist does not assert no God. The atheist does not say there is no God. Okay, so he says that. He says that atheists make no assertions. Religion is the most evil thing to exist based on something that doesn't exist. That is not an assertion, of course. That is merely a lack of belief. That is utter tripe. Okay, I think we can see this is merely a claim that simply tries to shift blame away from them to remove from them responsibility for the things that they do. It's to defend the tribe. So yeah. So I am a warrior says atheists believe concept of God created by mortal man. Man has been believing in God since the beginning, since the very beginning. The oldest architecture on earth is religious architecture. So yeah. What did I miss? Go back to the beginning, Islam Mentira Verdad. Go back to the beginning and play it at like 1.5 or 1.75 speed till it catches up, because it's only a few minutes. You'll get there. Dan Smith says a lot. Be best to watch from the beginning later. Yeah. Okay. So now let's look at Anthony Flew. Anthony Flew died, I believe, in 2010, and he recanted from his atheism. He actually recanted atheism. He became an apostate from atheism. Richard Dawkins called him an apostate. Now, you can't be an apostate from a non-possession. You can be an apostate from a religion, but Richard Dawkins used a different word. He didn't use the word apostate. He used a different word, which means apostate, but he was trying to hide that. Clayton J.W. Lloyd, if you can do that legally with the slides and info, then just do that, even at a price with some profit for your work. Yeah. Well, look, this is a lot of, believe me, you have no idea how many hours of work this is. It is a lot of time. And stuff doesn't just fall on the page. I have to do a lot of research. I have to buy things, actually. I do have to buy books sometimes. Some of it I can get, some of it I can research, but yeah, occasionally you just have to buy things. But the huge factor is time. Okay. Now, Anthony Flew in The Presumption of Atheism, 1984, concurs, although acknowledging this as a new definition, that atheism is merely the lack of belief. So this was, atheists were running into trouble. So now they needed to use sophistry. They needed to use some kind of word game to circumvent the need for proof. we need to give a new and much more comprehensive meaning to the term atheist. Now, remember, these atheists who are woke and on the left, they always have to invent new meanings for old terms. They always have to redefine everything. What is a woman? Well, we don't know anymore, do we? Right? It wasn't the Jehovah's Witnesses that did that. It wasn't the Baptists that redefined woman. It wasn't the Catholics that did that. It was very much the woke atheists that did that. Right? We don't know what a woman is, right? Simply. Islam and Tiro Vidad says, I have a question. Don't atheists believe in any God or the belief in something similar to Masons or sects similar to Masons? Look, they make claims, and atheists will say, well, some atheists do have, beliefs that are antithetical to Christianity, and like, okay, so now you've got contradictory beliefs. Like, where's the orthodoxy? Because like, if no one has orthodoxy, then it's anything you want it to be, which is utterly chaos. There is no rational basis for believing anything. Okay, Clayton JW says that why you should have them in form that you can sell to make some money for the time. Yeah, okay, well, that is probably true. So, I would now urge, he says, that the word be hereafter understood not positively, but negatively. Let the original Greek prefix "a" be read in the same way atheist as it is customarily is read in such other Greek English words as amoral, atypical, and asymmetrical. So not symmetrical, not typical, not moral, not theist. One could use it that way. In this interpretation, an atheist becomes not someone who positively asserts the non-existence of God, but someone who is simply not a theist. So here's a question. We just started this very show in the beginning, in the first episode, demonstrating that the term non-theist is widely used in academia. It is widely used to describe someone who's not theistic, who doesn't have any theism. So why do atheists insist that they are atheists and then try to co-opt agnostics, try to co-opt non-theists? It just doesn't make any sense. And he says in this interpretation, this is their truth. This is, again, if it's their truth, this means exactly man is the measure of all things. What you believe is true, but what I believe is also true, except when you're not an atheist, then what you believe is just wrong. But everyone's view is true. This is simply this is the pagan Greek belief that whatever you believe is true. This was the sophist idea of Protagoras. He never returned as a horse says, a few days ago, Matt Walsh reported Webster's Concordia and others have updated the definition of woman to include feelings. No doubt. Yeah, academia is overrun with these woke left atheists. Yeah. So now we have the word non-theist to describe someone who's not theistic. Okay? And someone who doesn't know, that's an agnostic. So why do atheists want to then co-opt terms? They even redefined the word religion. I had a guy who posted on the last video some comment, and I stated, look, you do realize that atheism is a religion, right? Because he was trying to tell me atheism is not a religion, blah, blah, I'm wrong. I said, look, atheists went to the Supreme Court of the United States of America, changing the definition of the word religion to a functional one versus a substantive one, to argue that on that basis they are a religion and require religious protection equal to that of any other religion, so that they have the right to do what they do. And once I posted that, the guy deleted the entire thread. So yeah. Now, the absence of belief claim negates the meaning of the word atheist because their lack of belief means that they cannot even state whether or not God exists. So this makes them agnostics, a term that atheists despise. So these people, this whole word game, I mean, man, when you try to talk to atheists, you get stuck in these word games on defining terms. Stupidity. They don't want to be pinned down, just like Abduls don't want to be pinned down. Now, one would have no contact. Okay, one would have had to have no contact with any theist to truly not have any beliefs about God. I mentioned this earlier. After just one such interaction, the atheist would have started to form beliefs in relation to the existence or non-existence of God. And once the atheist begins to examine the evidence, beliefs would exist. Now, He Never Returned as a Horse says, hard to run away from reality, but they sure keep trying. Oh, they certainly do. All right. Now, the opposite of absence is presence. He says the absence of belief. Okay, so you have the presence of what? Dogma? I had a vague sense that there were monsters under my bed at night. I looked and I didn't see any. Okay, great. So if you looked under the bed and found no evidence of monsters, would the natural response be to, one, have an absence of belief about monsters, or conclude via analysis that monsters do not exist, that you actively deny the existence of those monsters? So think about it. You have a vague belief that there are monsters under your bed. So you look and you don't see the monsters. Hell, maybe they're invisible monsters. Maybe they're very tiny invisible monsters. Who knows? But would you look and then have an absence of belief? Would you go, there's nothing there. There's no monsters. Yes, of course. You're going to conclude via this analysis that you deny the existence of those monsters. The absence of archaeological evidence is proof of non-existence. Exactly. So now, atheists use the absence of belief claim to state that atheism has no worldview or has no bearing on any other perspectives that an atheist might hold. This is merely another attempt to keep from having their own beliefs critically examined. Everyone has a worldview, no matter what they claim. Now, let's have a look at this book, The Critiques of God, again. It states here, and remember, this is making the case against belief in God. Okay, these are atheists who have no beliefs who are making the case against why your beliefs are wrong and their beliefs are right. Okay. Now, philosophical critiques do not quite convey the passion with which atheists have often carried on their analyses of theistic views. If they have no beliefs, why are they carrying on this examination with passion? For, historically, atheism has been and continues to be a form of social and political protest directed against institutionalized religion, against theistic doctrine. Thank you. So this is what this book tells us. This is merely an argument and a concerted effort against religion. So therefore they are against God. They're against the church, against Christianity, right? Now, despite the variety of philosophical positions to which atheists have subscribed, atheism is not simply a negative standpoint. There's a certain quality of intellectual temper that continues to characterize philosophical atheists. So the book tells us, these authors, these 20 famous authors tell us that atheism is not simply a negative standpoint. They are proof of it because they are providing evidence for their view and evidence against yours. Now you have the so-called village atheist whose primary concern is to twit and ridicule those who accept some form of theism, or for that matter, those who have any religious convictions. Now if they have no beliefs, why are they ridiculing your beliefs? They must have an idea that their ideas are superior, right? Now, their rejection of theism is based not only on the inadequacies that they have found in the arguments for theism, but often also on the positive ground that atheism is a corollary, or an opposite of, a contradictory to, a better supported general outlook upon the nature of things. So in other words, a worldview that is superior to yours. So they have a worldview that lacks God, that denies God, that is better than yours. So they're making a comparison. They've made an evaluation, and they believe that, now think, their lack of belief is better than all your beliefs. So if they lack belief, do they have morals? Do they have a belief in any kind of moral standards? Do they have any idea in any kind of legal standards? Yeah, of course they do. We know that they do. They know that they do. So clearly, they have a worldview. A man with his fishing net did experiments to measure the size of the fish in the ocean. His study showed that there are no fish in the ocean smaller than 4 inches. Also, his net had 4-inch spacer holes in. Yeah, of course. Don't forget, the atheist worldview is materialistic by default. So therefore, it rejects anything that is immaterial. It rejects anything that is of spirit. And they're asking you to provide evidence for spiritual, but by default, they've rejected the spiritual. It's like the astronomer has pointed his telescope at the stars, and he cannot see any dolphins. So he has therefore concluded that you are lying about the existence of dolphins. Dolphins do not exist. So, yeah. So we need to have a proof that God does not exist in order to justify... Oh, we need not have a proof that God does not exist in order to justify atheism. They state here, atheism is obligatory in the absence of any evidence for God's existence. But by default, their entire worldview rejects the immaterial. It completely excludes it as valid. It calls it straight up irrational. Hey, Kitsune, welcome. Yeah, it works. I'll watch on the replay. Yeah. Okay, now, philosophical atheists reject the assumption that there are incorporeal entities, right? Incorporeal, some would say. So philosophical atheists reject that they are incorporeal entities or immaterial entities. So how can you, with a purely material worldview, say that you are open to all evidence, but you have already rejected such evidence by default? So atheists are generally agreed we must look to the processes in nature. So purely material processes, which means if you are of the creation, you can only see things in the creation. You don't look beyond. There's nothing outside. There's nothing beyond that creation, right? let's continue. So denial, not just a river in Egypt. Villainous, haha, obligatory lying. Yeah, I noticed. I made that connection as well. Obligatory. It sounds like the Sharia. Yeah. So which means it's dogma. Don't forget that. That means it's dogma. Dogma is a belief that you have to accept without any argument. You merely have to believe it. Right? Denial, not just a river in Egypt. So atheism, commonly speaking, according to the Encyclopaedia Americana, right, the Library of Universal Knowledge states here, atheism is the denial of God. Theism, from the Greek theos and God, is belief in or conceptualization of God. Atheism is the rejection of such belief, which means you evaluated it and you have rejected it. In the ancient world, atheism was rarely a clearly formulated position. Encyclopedia Americana. So now atheists are trying to go back to, well, I saw one atheist writing 200,000 years ago, man was only atheist. Theism is a new idea. Theism is brand new. 200,000 years ago, man had, it's like, okay, fine, it look great, but can you show me this 200,000-year-old evidence? I would love to see it, but clearly not. Right. I'm a warrior says all people and atheists need to know that the power of God is with you all the time through your mind, senses, emotions, and yeah. Okay, so yeah, if God is being, then we are within that being. Now, according to the Encyclopaedia Britannica, Standard of the World, 14th edition, so yeah, this is a box that it used to come in. Atheism is the critique and denial of metaphysical beliefs in God or spiritual beings. Atheism is to be distinguished from agnosticism, which leaves open whether there is a God or not, professing to find the question unanswerable. Notice that there were definitions of atheism that spoke of this is meaningless to you, or you withhold judgment. So if you withhold judgment, you are an agnostic. Yet they then utterly reject the idea of being agnostics and claim to be atheists. And atheism is typically defined as someone who rejects the belief in God. And this just goes round in circles. Right. So they profess to find the question unanswerable. For the atheist, the non-existence of God is a certainty from the new Encyclopaedia Britannica. Oddly, it states here, the non-existence of God is a certainty. Don't forget, according to Carl Sagan, for an atheist, the non-existence of God was also a certainty. Right? So that's what he called an atheist. Now, I'll go with Carl Sagan on this one. Were the atheists in the ancient cultures as Assyrians or Hittites or Chaldeans? Not commonly so. Atheism in the ancient world is not as widespread as one would think. People were largely religious. There were, of course, the odd dissenter, but it's not really a major thing. People were generally religious. Built for Speed says, my pastor used the illustration on how those of German higher criticism denied the existence of the duck-billed platypus, a mammal that lay eggs. Unthinkable. Exactly. Okay, moving on. So let's look at the Historical Dictionary of the French Revolution. This is the Historical Dictionary of the French Revolution by Samuel F. Scott and Barry Redhouse. Atheism, a materialist philosophy. So there we go, materialism, right? Denying the existence of God. So someone who denies the existence of God. Held by a few philosophers during the Enlightenment and professed by a small elite. Oh my golly, an elite. The best amongst us, right? A small elite involved in de-Christianization during the Revolution. So don't forget, the French Revolution was the very first produced the very first atheist state. This was before the word socialism was invented as such, but it was also the first socialist revolution. So now you had the very first atheist, socialist, and atheism and socialism are intricately intertwined. Effectively the same thing, but so these atheists wanted to de-Christianize France because they believed that the church was evil, that Christianity was evil. And they slaughtered over 250,000 people. They murdered thousands of nuns and priests by drowning them, lining them up along ditches and shooting them, and so on. Of course, when you talk to atheists about this, they will deny it, just as Abduls will deny everything about Islam. Very similar in that sense. What is a person called who refuses to believe that atheists exist? Reasonable, because atheism does not exist. It's merely a lack of belief, so it cannot exist. Something that's just a lack of belief is a non-belief. It doesn't exist, right? There's no such thing as atheism. In the precise sense, atheism designates a doctrine. Notice, a doctrine is a series of beliefs that denies the existence of God and any principle of unity. Interesting, atheism designates a doctrine that denies the existence of God. Why didn't these people know it? So the French Revolution, here you go, and of course atheists will refer back to these philosophers of the time. constantly. It's a doctrine of denial. And of course, they were anti-Christian. Surely not. All right. Now let's go to Samuel Johnson's dictionary, 1755. So an atheist told me that, look, the definition of atheism was first coined by Samuel Johnson, and the Catholic Church and Christians have poisoned the idea of atheism, which is just a neutral, beautiful belief. It's just a religion of peace. And it's Christians that have come along and corrupted the whole idea. Islam Mentira Overdad says, the French Revolution was a very peaceful revolution, as peaceful as Muslims when they conquered Christians' kingdoms, and exactly, they turned into a slaughter. He never returns as a horse says, they mercifully, rationally removed bloodthirsty priests and nuns from France. How loving of them. Exactly. Again, hypocrites. Sergeant Grinch, why have I had to wait 57 years to be called reasonable? Oh, wow. Man, the night is still young. You never know what else he might be called, right? Might be called super intelligent, incredibly smart, Now, notice here. Atheist, adjective, atheistical, denying God. So we're going back to 1755. Now, of course, here's the thing. So this guy says, well, this dictionary by Samuel Johnson basically took a dump on atheists, and people have thus started to believe this nonsense about atheism ever since. Man, this was maybe the 20th dictionary ever made. There were like 20 other dictionaries before this one. So it's not like this guy was first. He just happens to have a dictionary. He's not the dictionary. This is from Johnson's Dictionary Online, courtesy of the University of Florida's George A. Smathers Libraries. Okay, right? So, denying God. So there we've got, even back then, people realized atheists denied God. Atheism, from atheist, it is only of two syllables in poetry. The disbelief of a God. Someone who disbelieves, who doesn't believe, right? So someone who's chosen not to believe, right? And he mentions here, Tillotson, this quote here, it's the common interest of mankind to punish all those who would seduce men to atheism. So this is one of the reasons atheists don't like this dictionary, because it has these negative things to say about atheists. So modern lexicographer Robert Birchfield has observed, in the whole tradition of English language and literature, the only dictionary compiled by a writer of the first rank is that of Dr. Johnson, because he would use these fancy quotes, these quotes from Milton's Paradise Lost and so on. Whenever he defined a word, he would show its use within prose and poetry. Birchfield was a lexicographer, a scholar, and writer. He edited the Oxford English Dictionary for 30 years to 1986 and was chief editor from 1971. So the guy has a clue, although Johnson's dictionary doesn't necessarily have the greatest reputation. Okay, let's go to the International Standard Bible Encyclopedia by James Orr. Atheism, from atheos, without God. Ordinarily, this word is interpreted to mean a denial of the existence of God. I mean, so there you go. How many times this thing has to be repeated, right? Classical Christians were repeatedly charged with atheism because of their disbelief in the gods of heathenism. Right, so back in the day, atheism meant that you didn't believe in the gods of the state, or you didn't believe that the head of state was a god. That would be termed atheism. Christians were called atheists for not believing in the head of state. So now, they denied the existence and reality of these pagan gods. This was a crime so dangerous that it was felt to be a just cause for cruel persecutions. Now, of course, in the French Revolution, Andrew Martin, welcome. Of course, the French revolutionaries killed Christians because they said that this was just cause for cruel persecutions because you refused to recant your beliefs. Now, the word dogmatic, it absolutely denies the existence of God. So in the dogmatic sense, atheism absolutely denies the existence of God. In the classical sense, they denied the existence of gods. Ordinarily, it means a denial. So here we've got this repeats. And of course, it has often been held that this is in fact impossible. Cousin has said it is impossible because the existence of God is implied in every assertion. When you say God does not exist, you are saying that guy over there does not exist. Okay? You're implying that guy standing over there does not exist. So you are implying, you are taking an opposite position against something that you are. So atheism assumes theism. It requires theism, in fact, to be operative. Okay, let's look at Ephesians 2:12. That at that time you were without Christ, without God, being aliens from the commonwealth of Israel and strangers from the covenants of promise, having no hope and without God in the world. Notice without Christ, without God. This doesn't mean they were atheists. It means they were pagans. Right? King James Version. Now, atheos in the lexicon of Strong's G112, atheos, It means as a negative particle, right? Not God, right? Atheos, not. So as in negative, as in not, denying the gods. Okay. Now you have here without God, knowing and worshipping no gods. But notice denying God, especially the recognized gods of the state. You are godless, you are ungodly, abandoned by the gods. So again, it's not merely just casual lack of belief, right? You don't worship any gods. In other words, you reject the gods. That would also be implied here. Okay, right. Thanks, guys. So yeah, now let's look at Rutledge, the Rutledge Companion Encyclopedia of Theology. And it tells us here, atheology. Now they bring this term atheology, a negative theology. Certain deconstructive strategies which seek to undermine any notion of a secure foundation, whether in Christ or in culture. While rejecting theism, these forms of deconstruction are not simply atheistic. Rather, they provide an atheology of culture, both avoiding and approaching theology, specifically negative theology. Deconstructive atheologies of culture disseminate radical, yet almost jubilant, skepticism regarding the capacity of any cultural sign, religious or secular, to produce a stable meaning and so to convey the presence of whatever it is taken to signify. Now, this is Hart 1992 and Taylor 1992, and this is a very significant statement. Is the King James Version the best version in English? I'm learning English and I was looking for a very good English version. I was once planning to do a talk on different Bible versions, but so the King James Version would probably be the most accurate in terms of literal translation from the Greek, from the original texts. The second most accurate would probably be the 1995 version of the American Standard Version of the Bible. The new one, the New American Standard Version, has relaxed those rules somewhat and been a bit more subjective. But man, it does depend who you ask. But from what I can gather, in terms of literal view, the King James Version would seem to be the best bet. I mean, I tend to lean towards the King James. Occasionally I'll bring up other forms, but the King James does tend to really accurately portray the literal sense of the words. But yeah, sometimes different Bible versions are necessary to really get the sense of something. So, but yeah, in terms of accuracy, it's apparently the best. I mean, from my looking into it. Now, notice they speak of atheology. This is anti-theology. This is something that seeks to corrode, to destroy, to undermine theology, a negative theology. So it's a theology which is the opposite. The ESV, Grace and Joyce says, yeah, I'm a little careful of various different versions because there are some very, very bad English translations. There's some terrible English translations, some really bad ones. So notice they speak of this negative theology. So they are deconstructive strategies. Notice deconstruction. This would be criticism. This is Marx talking about deconstruction. Again, this would be neo-Marxism, what is happening today. You cannot define a woman, okay? You cannot define woman. So notice they almost jubilantly, okay, they have a radical, they have deconstructive atheologies of culture that disseminate radical yet almost jubilant skepticism. So they want to deny the meaning of words, symbol. Now the word is a symbol, the word woman, that's a symbol of something, right? Of an adult human female. But now we don't know what a woman is anymore, apparently, because they've deconstructed the symbol. And they seem to take joy, this joy in going, well, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. They're deconstructing reality before your eyes, right? So they do not want any symbols, any words to produce a stable meaning and to convey the presence of whatever it is taken to signify. So therefore, respect my pronouns. Those pronouns no longer mean what they did before. They now mean whatever they say it means. That's why they are constantly having to redefine all words, to destroy meaning. They're destroying the logos, they're destroying logic. Don't forget the primary rule there are three major tenets of logic, right? Logic is based on three pillars, right? Three major rules of logic. The first is that P is P, that something is what it is. A cow is a cow. It's not a donkey. A cow is not a watch, right? A car is not a horse, right? P is P and P is not Q, right? So this is a watch. This is a watch. It is a watch. It is not a duck, right? But now, I'm not a man, I'm a woman. This goes literally against logic. Now, these are atheists that are irrational, they're going against logic. You now are going against this logic of P is P and P is not Q. Understand? A man is a man, a woman is a woman, a man is not a woman. They're different. And now, of course, they're destroying the symbolism. And they want to be whatever they want, so they are destroying logic. So atheists, again, these are atheists. Atheists need to own this. They're going against rationality. They're going against logic. It's a destruction of the logos. Because, of course, if the world is reasonable, it's because God is reason. If the world is legible and understandable, rational, it's because God is rational and he made a rational world. Therefore, we can understand this. We can determine what the rules within this rational world are, right? And therefore, science is something that comes out of the fact that we are rational. Christians understand that the world is scientific. The world runs on rational rules. So, yeah, and of course, the whole idea of atheism as an atheology, is to destroy all of this, right? Logic is destroyed, irrationality, exactly so. A is equal to not A. Precisely, Andrew Martin. Yeah, A is equal to not A. Logic is destroyed. It's irrationality. And this is, unfortunately, something atheists have to own. It's an attack on the Christian worldview. It's an attack on Western logic. So it basically leads to pride in lying. What I say overrules rationality and evidence, and I have to agree with you 100%. It's word magic. It's trying to recreate the world, right? It's magic. So now, so notice they provide an atheology of culture, avoiding and approaching theology. So they provide an alternative theology, an inversion in terms of theology. Okay, it's a negative theology. So atheists do have a set of beliefs. It's the negative inverse of the Western worldview. So not just is an attack on Christian belief, Christian doctrine, on God, on Jesus, it is also an attack on the logos. It's an attack on logic, because Christians basically invented the idea of science and logic. These are things that flowed out of the Christian worldview. The world is rational. The world can be understood. The world is not simply random. And of course, don't forget, materialists push the idea that the world is merely a set of random accidents. There is no logic to it. It simply is something, just an accident that occurred, right? Whereas Christian doctrine says, no, the world is rational, logical. So this is a major conflict. And so this here is really profound. What this states here is incredibly profound. Now, for Rorty, according to this scholar, the self has to be de-divinized. The self has to be de-divinized. Welcome, Veronica. So, yeah, Islam and their trans-race peoples are crazy. Yeah, this is crazy, this whole trans thing. So, yeah, it's insanity. So there you go. So look, this is a really profound slide, something to think about. The self has to be de-divinized. Now, don't forget, according to if you go into, again, communism, you go into the socialist uprising of the 20th century and so on, don't forget, they had to de-Christianize, just like the French Revolution. They had to de-Christianize the population. And of course, you had these camps where they had to simply strip these people of their morality, right? They had to strip them of their values and install these new communist values. This was called demoralization. De-divinized, demoralized, right? So when you demoralize someone, you don't make them depressed. You strip out their morals. You remove their values and install new ones. Keep that in mind. So this is exactly, again, I said earlier, Lenin made the statement that the communists must push the propaganda of atheism. So how do we distinguish between the propaganda of these communists, of the Communist Party, versus the propaganda of atheists? How do we know what atheists are saying is not just the propaganda of atheism, commanded that they do by Lenin? How do we know it's not merely that propaganda? Can an atheist give me a list which distinguishes between the propaganda of atheism pushed by the communists versus the legitimate statements of atheists who have now considered this view and they've come to these conclusions? If you can give me a list which separates, then we can know that, oh, ignore these statements. These are the propaganda of atheism pushed by the commies versus our legitimate scientific views. Please give me a list. I'd love to know, because you will discover that these views overlap incredibly. They're one and the same thing. It's effectively the same thing. Okay, I'll pause shortly. Okay, I'm going to end shortly, but they create their own gods. We see that in North Korea. The presidents are technically, yes, he is a god, but that's a cult. But yeah, many atheists will tell you again that they are the gods because they're the highest pinnacle of creation. In terms of matter, they are the highest form of matter. Ikar and Vice, Lloyd, Deduza. Right, so now let's have a quick look. This I did for fun, okay? This was not serious, but this is Albert S. Mackey, an encyclopedia of Freemasonry and its kindred sciences, comprising the whole range of arts, sciences, and literature as connected with the institution of Freemasonry. Let's see what the Freemasons have to say about atheism. A Mason is obliged by his tenure to obey, and someone asked about the Freemasons earlier. I think Islam and Tiro Vedad, you asked me. A Mason is obliged by his tenure to obey the moral law and if he rightly understands the art, he will never be a stupid atheist nor an irreligious libertine. That's the free thinker. Atheists love to call themselves free thinkers. That was the what the Enlightenment thinkers called themselves, libertines, free thinkers. So yeah, and the moral law we assume the moral law comes from a moral lawgiver, the God of the universe, right? So the communist states generate mere men as gods, correct? Stalin a god, Mao a god, North Korea, the Kim family, exactly. Well, you have to focus. The most powerful thing then would be the state, rather than God himself. So the Freemasons state that don't be a stupid atheist. I love that quote. Atheist, one who does not believe in the existence of God. Such a state of mind can only arise from the ignorance of stupidity, or a corruption of principle, since the whole universe is filled with the moral and physical proofs of a creator. Yeah, you know what? This is the one time you look at these Freemasons and go, yeah, yep, direct hit, burn, baby, burn. Let's have a look here. He who does not look to a superior and superintending power as his maker and his judge is without that coercive principle of salutary fear of God, in other words, which should prompt him to do good and forego evil, and his oath can of necessity be no stronger than his word. Because there is no consequence to anything you do, because there is no transcendent lawgiver to punish you for any of your transgressions. So, yeah, quite profound. Far too many atheists are socialists. Andrew Martin, I mean, the fact is that atheism was born alongside socialism in the French Revolution. This had been obviously building up for some time prior, but atheism and socialism are effectively one and the same. So socialism, when it was finally coined as the term socialism, it became a formal doctrine. So socialism was the aim of the French Revolution. It was a failed revolution. They claimed it was failed because it didn't produce the socialist paradise that they were waiting for, the communist paradise. Pardon me. So, of course, when the term socialism was developed in 1825, right, by, I can't remember his name now, but when the term was developed, it was an atheist philosophy. But don't forget, it was called Christian socialism. So it was Christian doctrine as a political doctrine, as a political religion, minus divinity. So, yeah. But yeah, atheists, and by default, don't forget, if you join the Communist Party, you're by default an atheist. He never returned as a horse. So we evolve from a moral, just God who holds men accountable for an insect-like hive mind that wholly supports the state. Sounds devo rather than evil. Fair enough. It's devolution rather than evolution. Yeah, I would have to agree. So yeah, this is really interesting what the Freemasons have to say. Not that I'm a fan of the Freemasons, but yeah, just thought it was interesting. So I will do this one more slide. And we're on 60 of 81, so I've got 21 slides to go. So I'll finish here tonight. And the Brill Dictionary of Religion. So that's this book over here. Atheism, godlessness, linguistically derived from the Greek atheos, is so named only since the 16th century. Wow, now you're going back to the 1500s, which means at some point a deep dive into the 1500s, right, to see what is the source now that crept into the 1600s and the 1700s. Corin Weiss, she said that was eye-opening. So what was eye-opening? Please do tell. So Veronica says, atheism and socialism certainly share the idea that mankind can solve all problems on their own. That is true. It's not about self-sufficiency. It's about denial of God, and we'll do this. It's the hubris of knowledge, right? But yeah, I was saying, Corin, I guess that socialism was founded in around 1825. The word socialism was created, was formally used to describe this philosophical idea that started the, thank you, Maurice. Yeah, that started the whole French Revolution, and this was supposed to be a socialist revolution. And socialism was started under the name Christian socialism. So socialism really was a religious movement. It was started specifically as a religion. Even humanism was begun formally, explicitly, specifically as a religion. Now you'll see many atheists saying, well, I'm a humanist, I believe in science, I don't believe in religion. Except their religion was founded specifically as a religion. And both humanism and atheism are legally recognized. They went to court, they went to the High Court, they went to the Supreme Court of the US, and they fought in court to be accepted as a religion, and they were eventually successful. But of course they had to redefine the word religion differently to be accepted. But now atheism is a religion in the US. It is not just a technicality, it is a religion. Humanism is a religion. Socialism was founded explicitly as a religion. We'll build a tower to heaven and dethrone God. The dudes are, yeah, exactly. This is Babel. Socialism removes divinity from existence and places it in the state. Exactly, it gives the power to the state. And the state's in the hands of whoever runs the state, right? Oh, the Freemasons have a point. Who would have thought of that, right? Okay, now, Atheos is so named only since the 16th century. So there's a reason to dive into that and look at, hold on, what is this talking about here? What happened in the 16th century? And sadly, one of the sources that will come up for the rise of atheism is a guy that, it pains me to say this, but Martin Luther, that guy again. Martin Luther he has stuff to answer for. That guy. The more you learn about Martin Luther, the more you realize the man was scum. Excuse my French, but he was scum. Atheism means the denial of the existence of God or of the gods, as well as of a life after death. Now, the Brill series, the Brill publishing house, goes back, 300 years? These guys are old when it comes to this kind of academic publishing. They are highly respected. So yeah, car advice to do this is even a broken clock is right twice a day. Yeah, so it is a radical. So yeah, let me have a look at the original live chat. So your comment was hidden. Interesting. Yeah, and we've got no crazy people in the chat, so I don't think anyone's saying anything weird. Sergeant Grinch, cool. I'll be gone in a moment. Yeah, well, I'll be finished in a moment, but thank you for stopping by. So yeah, you can just watch the beginning. Oh no, you were here at the beginning. So I'll be done in a few minutes. So I'm just gonna finish the slide and we'll call it. So notice, okay, so it's denial. So now again, we have confirmation from Brill, this one of the, if not the oldest academic publishing house in the world. It is a radical form of criticism of religion. Okay, criticism. So what did Marx tell us? Marx says in his writings, the criticism of religion is the foundation of all criticism. Marxism is the criticism of everything, right? This is why you have neo-Marxism attacking all Western institutions. It is the criticism of these institutions. Read Destruction when they say criticism, right? Everything is wrong. Everything's broken, right? And it depends on contingent historical and societal conceptualizations of God. Thus, a timelessly valid definition would specify anything but, okay, let's ignore that. So behind the imputation of atheism lurk confrontations. So behind the insults that atheism provides lurk confrontations concerning the religious tradition of a society. So these guys are attacking those religious societal traditions, right? A prerequisite for atheism is the formation of a theological concept of God. So now we're told by these academics that to have atheism, to have a negative view of theism, you have to first have theism. So theism came first. Now, how would atheism be the default position? To have atheism, you have to have theism first. Atheism is merely the critique of something. So therefore, atheism came second. Andrew Martin says, Clay to JW, Lloyd is the reference of book on the far right top corner. Yeah, guys, I don't know if it surprises you, but 90%, 95% of the time, I literally have the book on the screen. These are quotes directly out of the book. I didn't make this up. I didn't take a crayon and just start writing, okay? So if I go back, this is the actual book I took the quote from. There's the book, the Companion Encyclopedia of Theology I took the quote from. This is the actual Strong's G112, okay? Anyone can look this up. Blah, blah. Anyone can look up these books. These actually exist. I'm using references. I'm making up nothing. I'm merely using references. I'm pointing out references. So notice, a prerequisite for atheism is the formation of a theological concept of God. Now, it's crazy that atheists who claim to be rational and scientific reject all science. They reject all these references. They reject the scientists. They reject the scholarly authorities. They simply go, no, you have to believe the atheist when he says something. So in other words, hashtag believe all women, right? Hashtag believe my pronouns, right? So you cannot simply do that. We know you don't believe all atheists. You believe the evidence. Right? You have to find some kind of consensus at some point, some kind of authority, some kind of orthodoxy. You can't simply believe every atheist. You can't simply believe everyone's genders. At some point, you need to have meaning. And this goes back again. If you want to accept this person's gender is that gender, and they are rocket ship gender, and this is horse gender, and that's dog gender. Nonsense. Absolute nonsense. Right? But don't forget, these people, again, have a jubilant aim to destroy the symbols that convey meaning, the symbols that convey, important religious and secular meaning, and they take delight in destroying these things. This is exactly what Marx referred to in terms of his idea of criticism. Man would criticize all the time, demonize. Hussein Mashni, I have to agree, demonized, yes, and welcome. Believe all means to be gullible. Exactly that. We believe the evidence. We don't believe all. And this is exactly what they want us to believe. It is the destruction of logos, the destruction of reason, right? Karan Weiss says, this channel is my major screenshot find. Love all the references. Thank you very much. Yeah. Okay, so back to this one. So understand, we're looking at a very strong tie-in with Marx, and Marx was influenced by a bunch of idiots, okay? Like Hegel. I mentioned Hegel earlier. I mean, even Hegel stated, for those who were late, Hegel states that if facts contradict my theory, then the facts have to go. So if the facts go against my theory, then so much the worse for the facts, because the theory is correct, the facts have to go. And that's Hegel. And of course, Marx was heavily influenced by Hegel. So the man clearly had no respect for facts, no respect for empirical evidence. That is incredible pride. Yes, Andrew Martin, that is overweening pride. So yeah, that is a sin. There's a reason that. I also see object gender, which is dehumanizing. And again, yes, exactly. It's identify as rich, but my bank manager doesn't agree. Your bank manager is a bigot. You need to organize a protest. Okay, so let's have a look. Let's finish with this. The atheistic critique can be summarized in three principal types. A, the gods have no interest in the world. Epicurus, which is deism. Okay, so the gods have no interest in the world. So they made the world and buggered off and fell unconscious somewhere and they disappeared under a rock. B, the gods are human inventions. Critias and Feuerbach. I've mentioned Feuerbach in previous episodes. I've discussed Feuerbach. He heavily influenced Marx, and he also influenced Freud. And of course, they are champions of materialism. And atheists, by default, are materialists. And then C, the existence of gods can neither be proved nor disproved. That's agnosticism. Now that's fascinating. Okay. Now we already have agnosticism and we have deism. So therefore, they need to have an active disbelief in gods, which means they are atheists because they actively disbelieve. They don't simply have a lack of belief. Again, that's called agnosticism. So the atheist critique is accompanied by pleas for alternative systems of explanation of the world, which means alternative worldviews. Atheists hate to be told they have an alternative worldview, that because they have this view, it provides a completely different set of explanations and a completely different set of rationales for laws, for morals, and so on, right, for societal views. And yet, source after source after source by really good scholars is telling us it is a worldview, it's a set of doctrines, it's a set of beliefs. They have entire books describing their beliefs of how to run the world and how the world works and how the universe works. And yet, John Q. Lay Atheist constantly says you have to believe me. I mean, who are you that I have to believe you? And if all of you are right, how's any of you right? If all of you are correct, if your truth is the only correct truth, well, there's millions of you, thousands of you, whatever. Who's right? Who is the orthodoxy? What do I believe? At some point, there must be an orthodoxy. So yeah, that's just complete irrationality again. These people are just full of psychobabble. So the atheist critique is accompanied by pleas for alternative systems of explanation of the world, most often of a scientific or psychological kind. Yeah, that's a story for another time. Now notice the atheism of ancient Greece denied God's involvement in the world, just as did later deism, but not God's existence. Now this is interesting. Yeah, I'm right because I'm my own God, says Daduza, and that is true. Atheists do believe. Feuerbach was one of those people who says man is a God because man is the highest, the pinnacle of creation. You are a God. Many atheists have said on the channel in comments they are gods. They are a God, right? They are the God of their world, right? God's created the earth and go to heaven to drink wine and watch our misery. Well, yeah, who knows? I mean, but that was the view. But then again, you had these gods who were anthropomorphic. That was the Greek gods. So they weren't really transcendent. They were very human. Don't criticize me, it's bullying, exactly. But notice this last definition. The atheism of ancient Greece denied God's involvement in the world, which was deism. So the atheism of ancient Greece did not deny God's existence. It simply denied their involvement in the world. So notice, though, that the larger definition here is this. It's deism. So atheists are now trying to find legitimacy for their beliefs, like going back to, well, in ancient Greece and all that, there's beliefs in these fine scholars and philosophers, and therefore our ideas are very, very blah, blah, blah nonsense. What they are promoting are the very pagan ideas of 6th century BC and 4th century BC. They're literally promoting pagan ideas which which are primitive. These are primitive, 4,500-year-old primitive pagan ideas. It's like the emperor's new clothes, except the emperor is naked, and they slapped a sticker with the word science on his butt, and now we're supposed to go, oh, this is all brand new science. No, these ideas bear all kinds of resemblance to the ideas of the Greek pagans and the Roman pagans of 4,500 years ago that Aristotle looked at and Plato looked at and Sophocles looked at and said, you guys are idiots. So they bear a lot in common with Protagoras and others, and Gorgias, who were nihilists, who were complete sophists and liars, quite bluntly. Atheism is worship of self, and that is true. And in fact, many atheist philosophers will say exactly that. Their writings can be read to state exactly that. Lloyd, do you think atheism could be considered a spirit in a way? When you compare the beliefs of atheists, like Enlightenment style atheists, well, I mean, typically they try to draw upon the Enlightenment as an inspiration for their philosophers to give their ideas some kind of legitimacy. When you read the actual words of the Enlightenment philosophers, most of them were insane racists. I mean, God, you got to read what these people have to say. These people were racist like you will not. They'd make the KKK blush. And these people were very often white supremacists, the way that real ones, okay? But beyond that, would I say it is spirit? When you look at, in previous shows, I brought up the statement of belief, the doctrine, the principles of the Temple of Satan, and I've presented the doctrine and beliefs of the humanist organizations. Like in this case, I used Humanist Association of Canada, which is very similar to any other humanist association like that of America. Their beliefs are identical. So the Temple of Satan and the beliefs of Anton LaVey and the beliefs of the American Humanist Associations, which are like the formal atheist associations, are identical. In other words, the idea of atheism conforms completely to what Christians would call satanic. There are opposers. Remember, the word satanic comes from the Hebrew, the opposer, someone who opposes the Christian view, someone who opposes the Christian God, the God of the Bible. So yes, you could say that it's satanic, and it could have the spirit of the satanic behind it, this impulse. So yeah, I'd have to, given those definitions, we would have to come to that conclusion, I would say. Yeah, nothing new under the sun, Karan says. Certainly involves a spiritual battle. And don't forget, I mean, when you look at this definition here, this is profound. Okay, jubilant skepticism. These people take delight in destroying. They take delight in destroying, right? So let me see. Atheism is worship of self. Greek gods were as carnal as Greek people. Exactly. It's like Islam. It's no different. Hold on, I just got to change this to live chat. Somehow it changed again. So many politicians want anti-bullying laws to prevent them from being criticized. Yes, exactly. It's self-serving, but that's also atheists. Most of them are atheists. Let me see. And look up Dialect Practice 8 of 18 on YouTube. Exposes Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s doctrines of what Lloyd is exposing. Oh, really? What? Hold on. Dialect Practice 8 of 18. Okay. I'm just going to look that up here. So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question, but hopefully that answered your question. Aaron Ra, noted is now a Satanist along with his wife. Yeah, I could have told you, man, the first time I saw that guy, the very first time in my life, I saw a picture of him or I saw him on YouTube, I could have told you, a Satanist. I mean, come on, it was written all over him. It was written all over him. Don't forget, Anton LaVey's Satanism is considered atheistic Satanism. Now, whether or not we believe this, whether or not it's true and should be believed, that's another question, right? But they do claim to have atheistic satanic beliefs, that they claim to be atheist Satanists, right? Which means they are atheists who oppose God, which means it's not a lack of belief. It's an active position against God, putting yourself up as God or as a God. So yeah, there's a lot to be said here. So yeah, someone else told me, yeah, and there's a lot of atheistic Satanists out there, or Satanist atheists. Karan Vice says, my son took a philosophy class at a Christian college and we almost lost him to suicide. Yes, he went to a very dark place. Yeah, sadly, this is what happens at university. Karl Marx was taught by a professor of religion at university, a guy called Bruno Bauer, who turned him into a raving madman. He was a Christian, and he was turned into a raving madman, an atheist, by Bruno Bauer. He was an atheistic philosopher of religion. We just showed now this guy at this previous set of slides here, where we had this guy who is an atheistic philosopher of religion. So we have this guy, atheist, philosopher of religion. how do you think he talks about religion as an atheist who despises religion? Very likely despises religion. What kind of neutral view does he bring? Probably not at all. I mean, it might be very subtle about it, but yeah. Yeah, these people are there to destroy religion. They're not there to promote religion. Yeah. So Mary Alex, why would a Christian college mess up with your boy? No, you need to see what's going on at these colleges, Mary Alex. There's a lot wrong there. There are some serious issues at these places, some serious problems at these places. So yeah, so guys, I will end here tonight. So thank you very much for the time. I went a tad longer than expected. Andrew Martin, thanks for the very, very interesting commentary. Corin Weiss, thank you again. Very few Christian colleges, maybe Bola. My son may have been safer at a completely secular. Who knows? It's really difficult to know. Thank you, Lloyd. Once again, you explained in lurid detail the hypocrisy of atheists, communist, socialists. Yeah, I mean, it's just I have to spend a lot of time reading this stuff. Yeah, so guys, I hope this was useful. I hope this sheds new light on atheism as an actual, quite literally, a satanic doctrine, if you want to look at it. And I've done this discussion in previous shows, right? So yeah, universities are full of atheists, thank God. Yeah. So guys, I will continue this probably on Friday or the weekend. I'll continue with this, and we'll see each other again. So hopefully this was useful. Please drop some comments and do let people know about the show. And thanks again for the support. I'm very grateful. And use this material. Talk to atheists about this. Ask them. Simply, Your Highness, hi there. Ask them, how do we distinguish between the considered rational scientific views of atheists versus the propaganda of atheism promoted by Lenin, Marx, Stalin? Because it was compulsory that the atheists, the communist atheists, promote propaganda of atheism. This is part of their orders. So can they please identify for us what is legitimately proper atheist scientific views, which are to be respected, and the false propaganda of atheism? They can just separate the two for us so we can have a list. Then, at least we can say, oh yeah, that's false atheism. So that would be very nice. Of course, it's going to be impossible for them to do that. So yeah, thanks guys. Have a good night, and we shall see you guys soon. Bye bye. God bless.